Good afternoon, Mr. President. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Let's go back to the bilateral exchange here. These exchanges, what dividends have they yielded for the continent so far? Especially in specific, you can speak to Kenya.
One of them is the agreement we just signed. This agreement will unlock 250,000 job opportunities for young people from Kenya. That is a bilateral agreement between Germany and Kenya. It is a win-win. You know, there is a big labor deficit in Germany. There is a big labor oversupply in Kenya. How do you benefit Kenya? By giving them the opportunities in here. And how do you remove the deficit here by leveraging Kenya?
Are your young people happy about this? Of course, we understand that you've just signed this agreement with Olaf Scholz, but you also just recently launched a climate resilience project, WarX, to create over 200,000 jobs for young people. How do you reconcile that with the fact that you want to send these same skilled workers to Europe, Germany to be precise?
For your information, we are injecting into the labor market 1 million young people every year. And even if we created 500,000 jobs in Kenya, we would still have another 500,000 who don't have those opportunities. That's why the opportunity to create resilience jobs, which I did last week in Kenya, has no contradiction whatsoever with what I'm doing in Germany, because we have a huge bulge, youth bulge. We have a demographic dividend that we have to deal with. And we need to create pathways and opportunities. We are creating opportunities in our housing program. We are creating opportunities in our digital market. We are creating opportunities in export of labor, like the one we are doing with Germany. So these are different opportunities that serve the same purpose of making sure that we give our young people in Kenya the opportunity to work.
Already, of course, we know Kenya's debt situation. IMF alone, you owe about $2 billion over it. How sustainable is Kenya's debt structures, considering the fact that your previous strategies, like the tax hikes, have failed public resistance?
The situation around debt is not just around Kenya. We have 26 countries in Africa that are facing very serious debt situations. In fact, many people expected Kenya to have defaulted by now. But I promised them that it will not happen under my leadership.
Your debt distress have been associated with poor locally made decisions that are motivated by taking large loans for projects that yield limited short-term returns.
Precisely, and that is why I have put brakes on borrowing. That we borrowed almost 10 years ago what we are paying today, and our debt increased from about 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings to now 10 trillion. It is the reason why I have said we have to look for alternative sources of financing.
Are there alternatives?
Yes, we are working on alternative sources of raising revenue. Some of them are bearing fruit. Some of them, majority of them, were in the finance bill that did not make it. But we are working on how do we socialize ourselves to making sure that we protect our country from debt distress and from debt default. And we are working with partners. We are working with development partners. We are working with different countries. In fact, yesterday I had a conversation with Chancellor Scholz on their support of $90 million to support some of our interventions, and another $60 million. So we are also going bilateral, country by country, how we can work on concessional funds that helps drive our development.
Now, Mr. President, concessional or non-concessional, these are loans, and loans must be paid after a period of time. And I want to say that what you're doing still, taking aid from China, from Europe, and these are not free money. Aren't you building a debt trap that will be very disastrous for future generations who will not be able to pay such a debt and will continue to dance at the mercy of these creditors instead of building sustainable wealth for the African continent?
Aren't you contradicting yourself? Because on one end, you're saying we must not raise resources domestically.
We must.
And then,
we must, indeed.
So we must.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly what my trajectory has been. working with our economy to make sure that sustainably, to use your words, we raised resources locally. That is my focus. But even as we work on interventions, because that will not happen in a day, even as we do that, we must balance it with the reality that you need some concessional funding. And in fact, some of the concessional funding we are looking for is to retire debts that are very expensive debt, so that we progressively manage our debt situation.
You've seen the agitation from young people and the recent protests, not the very most pleasing situation any president or any leader would obviously want, and young people are clearly not happy with the situation as well. And of course, over 20 people died, 300 more injured. You promised to give these families some explanation. You also said that you will support the injured and that a mechanism is there to hold the police to account. How far have you gone in realizing these?
There is a lot of progress that has been made. In fact, part of the launch of the resilience program that I launched is part of responding to some of the issues that have been raised about jobs. The reason why I'm in Germany is because of the same reasons around jobs for our young people. The same way we have a housing program responding to jobs for our young people. The same reason why we are doing the digital ecosystem, because we are responding to jobs. Because ultimately,
let's go back to the protests before we come back to the jobs, Mr. President.
The protests were about opportunities. That's why I'm saying.
But they also did not want tax hikes, and which also bring me back to the question of debt. How do you in fact sustain the debts? But you said there are alternatives. Yeah. But then you made a promise in your apology on X to these young people that you would ensure that it doesn't happen again, and these families will be given an explanation.
Absolutely.
Do we see the president taking responsibility for what happened to the past
Absolutely.
months?
My government has stepped forward to say we are going to support the families that lost their loved ones. We are working on a mechanism to make sure that that happens.
It's 2 months on.
Yeah, it's 2 months on, but you know, I just assembled a new government. They are working on the nuts and bolts to make sure that we get that there. I am responding to the issues raised about opportunities. And that is why I'm telling you, we just launched, before I came to this city, a 200,000 job program that will support young people that are coming from vulnerable neighborhoods, even as we respond to climate action and climate change. That is the essence of why we have a strained economy. We have a strained economy because of climate change, switching from drought to floods and using our resources. Instead of developing our social sector, instead of paying our debt, we are now focused on managing the effects of climate change. And that is the reason why it has to be always a balance between what you're doing for the greater good and what you are doing to manage the crisis.
I'm glad that you said you are walking a path to make sure that these people are given an explanation for the debts as well. And I'm sure you also know that the people who want you to terminate your social contract, the people who went out to the streets chanting Ruto must go, no longer appreciate mere words from presidents. What is your assurance to these people?
Assurance is they will see us in action. The rollout of the programs that are there. And for your information, much of the protest was fueled by fake news and a majority of disinformation and misinformation. Or there is this tax about dogs, or there is this tax about this land, about that. And they were not there. You know, ultimately, when people realized that what was being used to drive the negativity around the finance bill were actually issues that were not in the finance bill.
Was that why you said there are criminals and people involved in treasonous acts?
Of course, there were criminals involved. I mean, the people who burned down Parliament, the people who burned down people's businesses. What do you call those people?
But they were peaceful protesters in the beginning.
How does a peaceful protester burn down a building?
Would you say that the actions that were seen on ground aggravated the situation in a way that young people had to also retaliate to stand their ground?
Do you agree that people who burn down buildings are criminals?
I do not condone violence, Mr. President, but your police officers, you are the commander-in-chief,
yes.
And you're also the chair of the National Security Council.
Absolutely.
You may not hold the guns, yet you pull the guns.
Let me tell you that the police have a responsibility to protect both the protesters and innocent citizens and property and life. And that's what they must do. It is a delicate balance, but it must be done.
We hope to see a positive outlook for the African continent, Mr. President.
Thank you very much,
Thank you so
Fatou.
much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.